Good afternoon and welcome to a little discussion. There's been a lot of controversy going on around the Board of Health and the upcoming meeting, and so we've pulled together the One Washington leadership team to have a conversation to learn from Representative Jesse Young and from Pastor Dennis as to what's happening both in the legislature and what's happening on the ground. And so we'll start out, Jesse. I know there's a lot between RCWs and WACs, and I think it'd be helpful if the audience could understand the difference between those and what impact we have as citizens on each of those.
Okay, so very quickly, when the legislature passes a law, it becomes what's known as an RCW, a Revised Code of Washington. What's happening with the Board of Health is not law. What they have been given the ability to do is make rules, and colloquially that ability is called a WAC, a Washington Advisory Code. And so what they are doing on the 12th that everybody's up in arms about is they are having an advisory committee to their board advise them as to whether or not they should adjust their rule as a WAC to allow for greater detainment. It's not law, but it could potentially have the force of law, but WACs are written all the time and challenged in court and then stricken because they're not legal. But that's the definition technically of what's going on here. They do not have the ability to write a law. The big problem that we have here, and what really everybody is up in arms about, is the fact that the legislature has been pushed to the sideline because of the governor's emergency mandates, and the governor is basically forcing through his agencies the ability for them to try to corral new rules that have the effect of law. And that's got a lot of people scared, justifiably. We've all had people reach up. And I know, Dennis, you've been doing a lot of social media advocacy on this issue. You've had a lot of people coming up from your church. Are their fears justified?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of countries that have paved the way to where, the natural progression of where we're at today could take us. And this is why we have to make sure and be vigilant to make sure that it doesn't happen in our state, because the state of Washington is really a test ground or a proving ground for the rest of the nation from what I see. And so this is why I think it's been so amazing to see the overwhelming response of our citizenry to step up and say, not our state, that we're not going to allow this to happen, right, regardless of what statement the State Board of Health has now put out. And we've seen that, right, Tom?
That's right. The State Board of Health initially had an agenda that said they were going to be taking in advice on this. And of course, that technically is required to include public comment. And what happened is word got out. And so, of course, we put out word, other parallel partner citizen groups put out the word, and the Board of Health received, our understanding, tens of thousands of pages of comment from citizens saying, no, do not pass these Washington administrative codes, these rules, do not pass them. We don't want that here. And they gave their reasons, I think, mostly intelligently, and it was well heard. And Representative Young, what kind of influence does that have? Is that effective, and does it need to continue as we go forward?
Well, it has an immense influence, and it definitely needs to continue. The reason why is because they're saying that there's nothing to see here.
Right.
There are going to be people that are going to push back on what we're saying right now, because effectively they're playing a very cavalier syntax game. The game is that we caught them doing this, and they're now saying, well, no, we're not doing that. We're not trying to force roundups of people. But what they are in fact doing, while technically they're not doing that, they are setting the stage to do that. And that's exactly what January 12th is all about. They're setting the stage so that as the legislature convenes and starts to pass laws around how do we deal with COVID, how do we fund it, which is really the key aspect that's going on here in the legislative session, they're creating the rules that will allow them to take that funding and try to enforce it. So they are setting the stage, and people are right to be up in arms. So even though they come back and say, we're not technically doing that, we all know the game that they're playing. We've watched them do it for 2 years.
It's one of the steps along the way.
It exactly
and every
is.
step puts us closer to where they could take action that we as citizens and the people that responded as citizens don't want to see taken.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, if they want to make the advocacy that there's nothing to see here, then I would ask the governor right now to propose a law that I will help sponsor with them bipartisanly that prohibits them very specifically from doing it. Pass that, and then you don't have to worry about people being up in arms or being conspiratorial about their rights. Let's just take that off the table. Real simple.
Representative Young, good ideas are few and far between, and that's a good idea.
Well, and I think there's a difference between somebody saying that'll never happen here versus somebody saying, I'm not going to allow that to happen here.
Exactly.
And I think that's the standpoint we have to have, is that whether it was proposed or not, which I mean, I think it's very clear to us, we can't allow that to happen here. And that's why we're taking this stand.
And along those lines, we want to thank each and every one of you for the many thousands that responded to the email and really made the voice heard. We need to keep doing it. As Jesse said, we got to keep the gas on the pedal. January 12th is a critical day. Along those lines, are you guys up for continued conversation on this topic as we learn more? It's very dynamic, obviously. We got to keep our people informed so we as a group, as a citizens, can actually make our voice heard. Are you up for more of that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think if we don't stay in the forefront, keep people informed, partner with the other citizen groups that are doing the same thing, it's going to go by so fast we won't know what hit us. And as Pastor Dennis said, it's not a matter of saying it won't happen and being passive. Instead, it's an active role of saying we are not going to let it happen. So I think
That's right.
let's stay tuned and keep going.
Agreed. Not on our watch, right? Thank you very much.